Her nephew, who does not appear to have been very old at the time, asked to have his photo taken on the train. What followed next is extremely unsettling. From an eerie paranormal photograph which may depict life beyond death, to the tales of a grisly murder that took place over 100 years ago. Welcome back to another volume of our 31-day Creepy Marathon Month special. Every day in the run-up to Halloween, we upload a scary-themed video covering cases of the paranormal, supernatural, and just damn right creepy stories. If you haven't already done so, hit those lights, sit back, and enjoy. The ghost photograph. Let's take a look at an unusual photograph. It was uploaded to the subreddit r/paranormal in August 2025 by a user known as ReverbedCreep. The user recounts a horrific incident 25 years ago when two of their sisters died in a house fire. Through immense emotional pain and the family struggles that followed, they organised the funeral, which would see the ceremony adorned with hundreds of arranged flowers. At the end of the ceremony, the user notes that they took many of these flowers home to their apartment, where they lived with their 3-year-old son. Upon taking the flowers home, the user's son reportedly began quietly speaking to someone they themselves could not see. A picture was taken by the user on that day that shows their son as he discusses the funeral flowers to this unseeable person, who appears to be represented by a bright white beam of light shining down on the floral arrangement. The user interprets this beam of light as the spirit of their sisters, coming to say goodbye to them and their son, and notes how special the photo is to them in their sister's absence. What do you make of this one? Could this photograph really show the spirit of the uploader's sisters coming to visit them one last time, or is this just a trick of the light? The phantom social workers. This is a particularly strange case that revolves around a series of reports made to the police and subsequently the media from both the United Kingdom and the USA. Throughout the 1990s, and starting in the United Kingdom, reports began to appear of mothers that were approached by women claiming to be social workers. Many of these reports were eerily similar. A mother with young children would find herself encountering either a woman or pair of women, either in their late 20s or early 30s, who were typically dressed for professional office work. These women would sometimes be accompanied by a man, who they claimed to be their supervisor. Under the guise of being social workers, these individuals were often let into the houses of young families, but soon began to display strange behaviour. Some reports imply that these supposed social workers were responsible for the sexual abuse of children, or that they even attempted to abduct children from their homes during these visits. Police inquiries were launched throughout the country, but failed to narrow down any potential suspects, and none of these reported cases were solved. The phenomena then spread to the USA, resulting in the same outcome, a series of loosely corroborated leads that led to no arrests or convictions. In the UK alone, 250 reports of such crimes were gathered over the course of 1 year, but the police only deemed 18 of these reports to be legitimate. A series of theories followed, in which criminologists suspected that cases of phantom social workers may have instead been vigilantes from the community who suspected that sexual abuse was being perpetrated within the homes they gained access to. Alternatively, this may have simply been a case of mass hysteria, little more than an urban legend to scare parents into keeping a more watchful eye on their children. What do you think? And have you ever heard of this one before? The Flannan Isles Lighthouse Mystery. Take a look at this lighthouse. On first look, you wouldn't think that it houses a dark mystery. Built in 1899 and towering 23 metres or 70 feet over the coastline of Eelan Moor, the lighthouse presides over lush green meadows, between which sits a railway track that was formerly used to transport provisions to and from the choppy, grey sea water below. The lighthouse is still in use today, but the island was demanned in 1971. As such, the light in the lighthouse is now entirely automated, and Eelan Moor is inhabited. The island receives only a brief annual inspection from the Northern Lighthouse Board to check that everything is in working order, and that may be a good thing. considering that the site is associated with a particularly eerie mystery. It all started on the 15th of December 1900. A passing steamer, Archtor, sailed via Elan Moor en route to Leith, the crew of which noted that the Flannan Isles lighthouse's light was inefficient in the poor weather. When they arrived in Leith, they reported this potential danger to the Northern Lighthouse Board, who sent out a relief vessel, Hesperus, to Elan Moor 11 days later, delayed by the poor weather. Aboard Hesperus was a small crew that would relieve the existing lighthouse keepers, James Ducat, Donald McCarthy, and Thomas Marshall, from their duties, so that they could travel back to the mainland. As the crew docked and approached the lighthouse, something was plainly wrong. Its flag, that always flew high above the island, had been removed from its pole, and no provisions had been sent to help the keepers perform their duties. Moreover, Ducat, MacArthur, and Marshall, who would usually greet them as they docked, were nowhere to be seen. But perhaps they didn't notice them arriving, the crew thought. Hesperus captain Jim Harvey attempted to get their attention by sounding his boat's whistle, whilst firing a flare into the sky, but still no response. Joseph Moore, the relief lighthouse keeper, ascended the hill toward the lighthouse, and set to work trying to find his seemingly absent colleagues. Both the gate to the lighthouse compound and the main door to the lighthouse itself was shut tight. Peering through the window, he could see that the lighthouse keepers' beds were unmade. Something was definitely amiss here. Searching with more of Hesperus's crew, he made a few more eerie discoveries. He gained access to the lighthouse building itself, and noted that the lamps had been freshly cleaned, and the waterproof oilskins worn by the lighthouse keepers had been discarded. At this point, a sweep was performed of the entire island to attempt to search for these now missing men. Nothing was found. It looked like the west side of the island had been ravaged by storms recently, but the east side was completely intact. There was evidence that some turf had been ripped away on the edge of one of the island's western cliffs, and in one spot, the railway had been ejected from its foundations. Nearby, a rock that weighed more than 1 ton had been removed from its resting position with no explanation. Captain Harvey and the majority of his crew promptly returned to the mainland to report the incident, while Moore and 3 volunteers stayed on the island to man the light. In a report to the Northern Lighthouse Board from the 26th of December 1900, Harvey said, "A dreadful accident has happened at the Flannans. The 3 keepers, Ducat, Marshall, and the Occasional, have disappeared from the island. The clocks were stopped, and other signs indicated that the accident must have happened about a week ago. Poor fellows, they must have been blown over the cliffs, or drowned trying to secure a crane. An inquiry was launched, but no bodies or additional signs of the men was ever found." While the story sparked superstitious tales of sea monsters, spirits, and foul play, other ideas point to supposed diary entries written by the men in the weeks before they died. Supposedly, the winds on the island had been extremely strong prior to the event, and the men were allegedly behaving erratically, praying and crying in response to the poor weather. Some speculations have pointed to a potential fight between the men breaking out on the cliffs, as MacArthur, a reportedly unpredictable individual, struggled with his mental health. Perhaps as they were up on the cliffs, this scuffle, combined with rogue waves amidst the storm, dragged them to their doom. In reality, we may never truly know what happened to MacArthur, Ducat, and Marshall on one of those cold, stormy nights in December of 1900. Creepy photo. Now this strange case takes us back to 1983, when Carol Collette, alongside her nephew, was travelling on the London Underground's Bakerloo line. Her nephew, who does not appear to have been very old at the time, asked to have his photo taken on the train. What followed next is extremely unsettling. When she reviewed the photos of her trip to London, Karen noticed something unusual about the image of her nephew on the train. While she would later insist that this photo was taken while the train passed through one of the Underground's tunnel systems, there is no denying that what appears to be a man strapped to an electric chair can be seen through the train's window behind the boy. You can even spot what looks to be electricity sparking to the left and right of his body, while his head is unseen, cut off behind the top of the window. Terrified, Karen sent the picture to the Society for Psychical Research, where Maurice Grosse was able to analyse it. It was quickly determined that Karen had not tampered with the photo in any way. This was indeed a genuine article, but did it show something paranormal? Well, to this day, we don't really know. Grosse discovered that the spirit Karen captured in her photo really was strapped to an electric chair. It was none other than Bruno Hauptmann, a convicted killer who was executed in 1936 for the murder of a baby. Even stranger was that what Karen captured was specifically an iteration of Hauptmann's wax figure from Madame Tussauds' Chamber of Horrors attraction elsewhere in London. The photo matched the waxwork perfectly, right down to the creases on his shirt. So was this a simple lucky shot by Karen, who happened to take a photo just as her train passed by a promotional poster for Madame Tussauds? That's the conclusion that Grosse arrived at, but when he contacted the famous wax museum to confirm this, they alarmingly noted that his waxwork was never used in any promotional material. So what exactly did Karen capture in her photo on the tube that day? Is this just a photo of the waxwork, perhaps placed in one of the underground tunnels as a prank, or something more sinister? What do you think? Now we'll end on something truly terrifying, the Hinterkaifeck Murders. I first read about these murders many years ago, while staying in a cabin myself, and honestly was unable to sleep for most of the night. The Hinterkaifeck Murders are a rabbit hole that could easily warrant an entire documentary. It all started in March 1922, 43 miles north of Munich, Germany, on a quiet Bavarian farmstead known as Hinterkaifeck, from the German word hinter, meaning behind, and Kaifeck, the name of a small hamlet around 1 mile further north. In what has become known as one of the most gruesome and baffling crimes in German history, the Hinterkaifeck Murders would see 6 individuals dead. Married couple Andreas Gruber, age 63, and Kazilla Gruber, 72, their daughter Victoria Gabriel, 35, Victoria's children Kazilla, 7, and Joseph, 2, as well as the family maid, Maria Baumgartner, 44. The murders in question were preceded by a series of strange happenings in and around the farmstead. The family's previous maid had quit, supposedly after hearing strange noises in the attic. Moreover, Andreas Gruber had found a newspaper that he did not subscribe to, from a town he had never visited, in his house. Andreas had also told his neighbours shortly before his murder that fresh footprints leading from the surrounding woodlands to the farm's machine room door had been discovered in the snow. Most eerily, the lock to that door had been smashed. Reportedly, unexplained footsteps had also been heard in the house at night, and one of 7-year-old Kazilla Gabriel's school friends, who had visited the house the night before the murder, had fled the farmstead after a violent quarrel broke out, but very few details were given. On the evening of the murder, the 31st of March 1922, investigations would reveal that Victoria and her daughter, as well as her parents, were lured from the farmstead's barn. Here they were murdered one by an unknown assailant, with repeated blows to the head inflicted by one of the family's mattocks, a pickaxe-like digging tool. Once the first 4 victims had been killed, the murderer moved to the farmhouse, where they claimed the lives of little Joseph and Maria, the family's new maid, who had only been on the job for 1 day. The bodies were found 4 days later, after suspicions raised when the family failed to show up for school and church. A family friend called Lorenz sent his son Johann, aged 16, and his stepson Joseph to the farm on the afternoon of the 4th of April 1922 to see if they could find the missing family. When they found nothing, Lorenz joined them himself, where he would be the first to discover the bodies. Despite an extensive search that involved the questioning of several suspects, including Lorenz himself, nobody has been found guilty of these particularly creepy and savage murders. What followed the discovery of the bodies was an investigative maze that would see a multitude of convoluted clues and dead ends come into play. Suspects included those close to the family, as well as individuals from the area with shady criminal pasts. But still, insufficient evidence meant that a concrete conviction could not be made. The murders have been the subject of various popular true crime books, podcasts, and documentaries ever since. So that's it for this volume. Thanks for watching. We hope you're enjoying the Creepy Marathon month, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow for another scary video.